What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Halos. I'm your host today, Jared Timms, and I'm joined alongside my co-host, my partner in crime, Nate Green. Nate, forgetting about you like always. We are joined by,
Always.
yeah, always, dude, always. We are joined by beat writer for The
Yeah.
Athletic for the Angels, Sam Blum. Sam, welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Nate. Look forward to being here as always.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm excited that you were able to take time and talk with us for a few minutes. Because a lot of big news happening out there. But before we get going with those questions, let everybody know where they can find you if they don't know where to find you already, and also where they can find your work.
Yeah, you can find me at theathletic.com. Go to the Angels tab. That's a good place. And also on Twitter at SamBlum3. Yeah, that's probably the two best spots. Twitter
Absolutely.
still exists, so no Instagram yet.
Yes, yes.
Nice.
Hopefully that little Twitter thing stays around for a little while. It's a lot of fun. So, Nate, how you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Not doing too bad.
Good to see
Excited.
Sam on. It's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always, especially with the topic. We're going to continue to roll over with what we talked about last time. Of course, we kind of broke down Jeff and Rhett's article. I figured, hey, I mean, might as well reach out to Sam, see if he can talk. He has, I don't like using some words, but he's been the most critical of the team, of the writers, of the beat writers. And I really wanted to get Sam's opinion on, his favorite topic. I think is it your favorite? It's the most requested topic by you in quite some
Um,
time.
I mean, favorite in terms of like best stuff to like I most enjoy talking about.
I mean,
I just think it's the most
how
relevant. I just think it's the most relevant. Like it comes to like everything is from the tree of Artie to some extent because it's not like I enjoy it or don't enjoy it. I just think it's if you're doing the job, you're covering what he's doing because and that's why I mean, I think some people are always wondering why I call it out, why he didn't always talk when he didn't talk to us. And it's not because I want to don't like him or I don't know him to be honest with you, or because I think he's a bad person or because I think he's a horrible owner. It's because he makes every decision really to some extent. He doesn't make every minor decision, but it all stems from him. So, if we're gonna get a sense of why things are the way they are and why the team is good or bad or whatever, I mean it's incumbent on him to kind of answer those questions. And I'm certain if the Angels win the World Series, he'll be available then. And you have to be available when your team has, been out of the playoffs for 8 straight years and has had losing seasons in 7 straight years. So I think it's important. And, wouldn't say it's my favorite topic, but I do think it's the most important thing to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are so many topics that stem from it that just over the past 3 years that have not really been covered. I mean, starting all the way from Tyler Skaggs all the way up to selling the team. So it was it was time. And again, I like telling the story. I remember I think the last time he was at an Angels game. I think it was either opening day or something along the lines of that. Somebody was being inducted into the Hall of Fame. It could have been Vlad, and he actually showed up late to the event because of bad traffic, and everything was kind of pushed back because of him. I mean, from a fan's perspective, you look at it and it's like, well, that's typical Artie. But I did want to start off with some questions about the team, but let's just jump right into Arte Moreno talk because I think there's quite a lot to break down. So um, from all of it, I mean, I just kind of want to get what did you take away from it? There were a lot of key things addressed. Were there some things that you thought were more key than others? I mean, you were there. I'll let you kind of break it down in a sense, and I'll let you have the floor, man.
I thought the biggest thing was, going in was trying to get a sense of, obviously he didn't sell the team. And, I think it was somewhat alluded to, and he spoke to Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated that, obviously he wanted to come back and there was a reason for it. And maybe there was going to be something he changed or adjusted. And I wanted to get a sense of, okay, what is it that if you're coming back, what is it that you're going to do differently? Because clearly the status quo is it's I mean, listen, I think they could have a good year this year, but I don't necessarily look at this team and see a ton of long-term success. They have some good young pitching, but I don't necessarily look at the roster and see a team built to win year after year. And so what was he going to do differently? how are they going to kind of set up a pipeline? How are they going to kind of establish, whether that's through payroll or through minor league player development, what was going to be different? And the interesting thing was, I mean, instead of really saying, yeah, we're going to do things differently, he just kind of defended the way he operates to begin with. So, I think some of the points he made fair. Obviously, he has spent on payroll, but I think, he also commented on the fact that he's always kind of given an unlimited budget for the minor league side. And I just I don't know how you could square that with what we know about the way the minor leagues have operated. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't, obviously the Angels books aren't open to me or to any reporters, but I think you can just read between the lines of how minor leaguers have kind of been treated. And not only just that, just how many of them come up through the Angels system and have success. There are obviously some outliers like Mike Trout, Jared Walsh, who's done really well. I think Reed Detmers is in a great position to have an incredible year, but I don't, there's not a pipeline necessarily. And so that to me, talking to Artie was, what were we going to get out? What were we going to kind of learn about what will he do differently? And I didn't really feel like he felt like he needed to do much differently. And he didn't really take responsibility for why this team is where it is. So I just got the sense he kind of just got cold feet about selling the team. And that was really the impetus for why he didn't sell it. So, I think Angels fans, there will be some who might have an optimistic outlook on this. There will be some that will have a very negative outlook on it. I think, the truth's probably somewhere in between, but honestly, the track record isn't good in the last, 8 years. And I think you kind of have to look at that and look at it really critically, because it isn't working right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is the cool thing with baseball in a sense. And yes, it's a stat-based game, but everybody's allowed their opinion. And I think, if Arte Moreno did a good job in the press conference, which some people think that he did, there's some stuff to be taken away from that, and some optimism. On the other hand, they could have the opinion that you just gave, and it's like, what's going to change? Like you can talk. It's exactly how Nate views the Angels. Like, you can talk up the Angels every single year. Like, this team's a playoff team. This team's a playoff team. But until you see some actual change, right, there's nothing to really look forward to. Same thing with Artie, and we mentioned this last podcast. Like, is this going to be a change? Well, like, we don't know right now. Like, talk to me in a year and see what's changed. Like, has the farm system started producing? Or have we talked to some guys in the minor leagues and there's been some changes? Did they win? Because winning changes so much. I mean, that's like the key to everything. Like, if the Angels go off and make the playoffs and make it to the World Series and win a World Series, I mean, we're probably not talking too much about a lot of the things that happened. But since Angels haven't won, since Angels haven't won, we are keen in on every little detail, from minor leaguers all the way down in the Dominican, who are suing the Angels in a sense.
But that stuff's important. I mean, it's not minimal, because this is a reflection of the way this place operates. And listen, I don't know, it's though that little thing. I mean, I want to say little because it's those two guys' livelihoods, but I do think those things are reflections of how you operate, and how you operate is really important if you're trying to find a winner.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too, Sam, goes back to like Artie wanting to be a baseball guy, but he doesn't have the baseball background of some of these owners and some of these general managers that like have lived, breathed, and done baseball their entire life. So this guy saw baseball and was like, oh, I want to invest. And he has had total control of everything he's done. That's how he became as rich as he did. And now he tries to take control of a thing that he doesn't really comprehend. And I think that made it hard for him once we got to once we get to some of those minor league things, because everyone sees the major league stuff. They see like, oh, we give this guy this much money. Oh, we saw these guys' numbers. But not too many people, especially pre 2010, maybe even 2008, you're not really talking too much about minor leaguers and their housing and all these types of things. So Artie probably has no knowledge of this until he actually physically gets in there, and he's like, you know what, just do whatever's been going on. And whatever's been going on is not good enough, because everything has to change. We need to adapt, and we need to get better. But I actually said very similar to what you did yesterday. I said reading And looking at Artie's press conference, he looks the exact same as he always has. He is Mr. Consistency. He always wants a superstar. Business is first. And you saw it in his interview. Business was first. He wanted the superstar. And it doesn't look like too much is going to change from him perspective. Maybe some more money goes into the minor leagues, we hope, but we'll have to wait and see. That's the wait and see approach that Jared.
The interesting thing that I thought he said was like there was one line when he referred to, and this was at the bottom of the article that hopefully people read, where he basically said that he equated the $100 million more in payroll that like the Mets and the Dodgers maybe spend to. He said we can't afford to lose $100 million, and I just thought it was interesting that he basically looks at spending that much more money as losing money. And in a way, I think when you like, if you were to look at what the Padres have done, a team that is, I think one of the most exciting franchises in probably all of pro sports, the way they've adapted the last couple of years and really started spending. That they spend more, and I look at that as an investment, right? Like that's an investment in your success. The way that the fans have reacted to it, they probably get a return now on that investment. Does that mean that the net profit, the revenues are more? Maybe not right now, but maybe it will be in the future, right? You start to act like a big market team, and you maybe will start earning like a big market team. The Angels, I think, are middling in that sense. They're not a big market team right now. I think that they want to present themselves as that when they obviously call themselves the Los Angeles Angels. Mm-hmm. They'll spend record contracts on Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon, maybe Shohei Otani, but it's like it's got the allure of a big market team without anything really, the infrastructure to back it up. That's the way I look at it.
My one question, though, when you bring up the Padres, what happens if Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado in this next contract? What happens if year 3, Bogaerts and Machado are complete misses? Do the Padres start looking at things the way the Angels are looking at it now, going, man, we wasted a lot of money. This was not what we thought. We're here to win championships. Like, yeah, we put butts in seats for 3 years, but Bogaerts hit 225. Machado was on the injured list the entire time. Like, I do think Artie has a little bit of buyer's remorse after some of these contracts he's put himself into, and part of it's his fault. And I 100% say they are his fault. I'm not going to say they aren't his fault, but you look at Josh Hamilton, he's probably got a little bit of buyer's remorse from that one. You look at Albert Pujols, he probably has a little bit of buyer's remorse. You have Upton. You have CJ Wilson, but he got paid back from that one, which was nice. Even though Wilson had a good year, he still had some injuries. And then you even look at Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon has been a huge miss for there's 2.5 years or whatever.
There's two types of buyer's remorse here too. When you look at it, like the Albert Pujols contract, that was a business move when you really break it down and you look at it. Like that's what helped them get the big TV contract. Right after they signed Pujols, they got the big TV contract. So, I mean, from a business perspective, it probably wasn't, because again, butts and seats and everything. From a fan perspective, you want to. I mean, again, winning.
And I think that's what people are upset about, is the winning games, right? Like nobody is upset with the business model of the Angels. Like you might be a little upset with not spending in the minor leagues and things like that, but you can't be upset with the Angels spending 180 to 190 million every year and having the giant TV contracts, things like that. What they're upset with is they keep spending money in the wrong places and keep losing games. And I think that's what Sam's kind of alluding to here, is like Artie is spending money in the wrong places and he's not winning. And now he's kind of in that like, where do I go? Do I continue to do the same thing and continue to put money into guys that may or may not help me win? Or do I try and put money into the minor leagues and hopefully this farm system and pipeline starts to show up? And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're doing things the right way. Maybe we can turn into the Astros instead of the Dodgers or the Mets.
And, I think, I mean, this is, if you were going to get a new owner, I think this is a part of it too. You can't take out that whole dynamic. I mean, this team was going to be worth at least $3 billion, which would have, we're talking about Steve Cohen and what he paid for the Mets. A record was about $2.4 billion. And so, the Angels were going to be like the most expensive team. And there's a reason for it. And I think people, they play little brother, but in a lot of ways, the Angels can be a totally separate big brother, right? Like they could be that like a huge big market team, like the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, like any team, like the Red Sox. They could have spent like that. I think if you're going to buy a team for $3 billion, you're not going to let Shohei Otani walk out the door, right? Like, you're going to kind of spend on the back ends. Like I think when you look at what the Dodgers and the Astros in particular, those teams are really good at establishing a pipeline and then also spending in free agency. And just think the Angels are a little bit they're kind of cut just a little bit on either side. There's not that if you're not going to. I think the Angels, in order to be successful, probably need to exceed the luxury tax a pretty significant amount, especially if they're going to keep Otani. And they spend, but it's just not enough if you're not going to have consistent players coming up through the system. But
especially when you keep spending on wrong guys like a Justin Upton and not to throw Justin Upton or Anthony Rendon or any of these guys under the bus, but like they just haven't been worth their contracts. Or to Anthony Rendon's credit, he hasn't been worth his contract yet. He still can be, and it's like, if you guys are going to get paid $45 million or $30 million like Upton, you've got to be able to play well, because when you're not playing well, that puts the Angels at a disadvantage, because now the luxury tax is even closer and you have.
I mean, like I said, I think the Angels have a good. Arte and Perry have kind of said about this, him one. And, listen, if they had, I don't think getting Trey Turner for someone who's as wealthy as Arte, it shouldn't be prohibitive of also getting the guys that they ended up getting, to my opinion. But listen, if you're working in the budget that they're probably working in, then I think Perry did a very solid job. And I came into this offseason kind of thinking there's not really a direction here, and they're probably going to kind of re-up in the same way that they always have, and it's not going to work. And I think to their credit, put together record, fans have convinced themselves of every year. So we'll see. But if they don't have a good year this year, it's just awful, right? Like, I mean, I think that a lot of things a lot of dominoes will fall if this is not a good year for them. It will just be a poor reflection on this organization if they can't find a way to win this year. So we'll see. I have optimism that they will be good. It's important that they're good.
Yeah.
This is why I don't give 95 plus win expectations like some people in the room. Oh, Jared. Because that's exactly how I feel. It's like every single year you read everything, you look at everything, and it's, the Angels are going to win 94 games. They're going to finish in the postseason, and you never know. Mike Trout gets there. Shohei Otani gets there. We could win the thing. And then you're in August, and they're lucky to win 60 games. It's nice to have.
At 87, and it was 73, right? So I was about 40.
I had 80 and 82, and I was still upset that I was that far off.
Yeah, you were much closer. You were way more realistic. So I mean, you're wrong again. I mean, I think it's easy when you're around a team all the time to kind of feel like, okay, this guy's pretty good, right? But I mean, you look at the rotation; it's like that's a good rotation. I'm not crazy to think that. I mean, we just watched Patrick Sandoval right now dealing on at a pretty big stage against a really good lineup. Reed Detmers has looked great. He finished the season really strong, and you have Otani, obviously, and we'll see what Tyler Anderson can kind of bring. But it's a good rotation, and that's the basis, I think, for the success that they should have this year.
Yeah, Sandy has looked great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry if this thing got cut off for all the listeners and watchers. My internet's been horrendous. With that being said, I have a couple more questions here for you.
No, what does he have?
Am I cutting in and out? I'm sorry, guys. We're gonna do some major editing on this podcast. I can see myself going in and out here, but we started talking about Shohei Otani just a little bit. I kind of want to dive into that. What are your thoughts? Do you think that Shohei Otani may stick around? Do we think that, I don't know, that I think that's kind of the big question. I think everybody thinks that he's not going to be an Angel, but I mean, you look at he's making 30 mil. You lose you lose Renfroe next year. That's about 10 mil. You lose a guy like Urshela next year. That's another 10 mil. And hey, you add that up and that's 50 million right there between all of them. So I think that they are capable of extending and signing Otani. I think it comes down to him at the end. But did anything stick out to you when Artie talked about Shohei?
Well, first off, I mean, if they lose all those guys, they're gonna have a pretty bad team if all they get back is if all they have is Otani and the players that they have. I mean, right? Like they need to. That's the thing with the Angels. They need to be able to fill the rest in. They did a good job of that this year. That's why I said at this top, I think they're in a good position to have a successful season this year. But I don't look at them as a long-term successful team because, I mean, maybe Otani leaving is an opportunity for them if it does happen to like really build a good roster. I mean, and it's going to be tough. It's a huge number of wins to replace, and obviously just a massive hole if he were to leave. But you have to, when you're a franchise, like you have to think ruthlessly like that. You have to think like, what do we do, right? You can't just be like, oh, well, let's hope, right? Like that's not a good strategy at all. I think the really successful teams. My first year covering baseball, I covered the Rays, and I think when I look at what they do successfully to some extent is that they're not like attached to their players. And that could be a bad thing in a lot of ways, because I think, players are the lifeblood of a fan base, and, the players have connections with the fans. But at the end of the day, I mean, the Rays are like, okay, well, what do we need to do to win this year? And they usually do win. So I look at it that way to some extent. If you're thinking from the vantage point of an owner and a front office, like you need to think about what it will take for you to win on all contingencies. But yeah, I mean, with what Artie said about Otani, he's he said he was a top 10, 5 to 10 player in the game, which is kind of a ridiculous comment. I'm not sure what that was about. It's just not true, right? Like it's like, where does he, like, is that a negotiating tactic? I don't understand that one. I don't know. Does he not watch baseball? Like maybe he doesn't know who Otani is. He like thinks Otani is somebody else. It was very weird. I just didn't know where that came from. And, he just said he would be willing to go over the luxury tax, and he feels like he'll make a competitive offer. But there were a couple other statements he made throughout the rest of the availability that I thought were like a little bit contradictory to that in terms of, his willingness to like really spend a lot above, I think significantly exceed that 233 that it is this year at least. So yeah, it's 233 million. So it's I think a lot of it will depend also on how successful the team is, and there's a lot of factors. But right now, I think it doesn't feel like it's likely, but there's a lot of time before now, and when that decision has to be made.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like, just some of the quotes, it didn't feel like he was going to be willing to compete with a Met type offer. That's exactly where it felt like he went. He's like, I'm not going to be able to, if we're not in a position to, you mentioned already, lose 50, $100 million. And that's what it kind of felt like he led towards was, the Mets or a team like that outbidding the Angels by 50 or $100 million, and we phrased it this way. Like, it seems like the Angels have their mark of where they want to, try to sign Otani at. And if they go above it, it doesn't seem, if a team goes above it, doesn't seem like the Angels are going to really push to go any farther with that. So Nate, I don't know if you have anything else to add on the Otani thing. I don't want to beat a dead horse, because I feel like it's only been Otani and Artie that we've talked about, the past 8,000 episodes that we've done. And, it's kind of a lot of fun to talk about, but a lot of interesting roster moves. I want to get on to our last question here. A lot of possible interesting roster moves that could happen. I have a list of 6 players here. I want your thoughts on if they make the opening day roster or if they don't make the opening day roster. And it kind of adds, there are a couple players that kind of I didn't put in the mix, but didn't. But so Logan O'Hoppe.
I think I'll make the opening day roster. It's not a guarantee though, right? Because you have Max Stassi, who's solidified, I believe. Obviously, I mean, he's certainly being paid enough right now where they couldn't, for the next 2 years, but they need to have him on the team. And obviously he's also a team leader. And I think there's a track record there where, you could look at what happened to him last year and feel like, that might have been something of an outlier offensively in particular. The big question with catcher is Matt Thaiss, and what is the Angels, how do they view him, and are they willing to let him walk? Because he's got no options left. And so if you don't put him on the roster, he'll go through waivers. And listen, he's a catcher that can hit probably above average comparison to other catchers. So he'll probably get taken, especially by maybe a bad team that, wants to kind of work with him to kind of really perfect the position and put him in position to hit well and be maybe a long-term player for them. So there's a scenario where they take 3 catchers. I think the most likely scenario is they have Stassi and Ohapi. But yeah, that's a really tough one. That's going to be a tough. I'll say yes to Ohapi though. I just think that they're trying to win this year. You're going to put your best players out there, and Ohapi to me seems like the best player that they could put out there.
Yep. Yeah, I want to throw that one in first because that's such a tough one. Brett Phillips.
Man, I love Brett Phillips. He's so nice every day. He says hello. He's just like the nicest person. I think it's more likely than not that he does make the team, but I'm going to go with no on this just because I don't know. Maybe I'm listing other names of people you'll ask me in the future, but if I were constructing this roster, to me, what I would prioritize is I'd put Andrew Velasquez on it. And the reason why is that I think you need somebody who could come in and be a defensive replacement on the infield, in particular a shortstop, because you don't have a solidified real shortstop, and you want to be able to have good defense late in games. And people don't always realize this about Velasquez, but he would consider his primary position to be center field. And obviously someone like Trout is going to need off days this year. You'll have a good defensive center fielder. And his hitting is what it is. I don't think you put him on the roster for hitting, but I mean, Brett Phillips has really, really, really struggled this spring offensively. I mean, he struck out in, I think, about half of his plate appearances. So listen, I mean, they signed Brett Phillips. He's on a major league deal. I think if they were to DFA him, they're probably in a position to keep him because I don't know how many teams are going to want to pay him the 1.2 million. So he even said he didn't get any other major league offers. Love Brett Phillips, would love to cover him, love to have him on the team and deal with him every day. But I mean, just kind of looking at this from what makes the most sense situation, I would go with no, but I don't know exactly how the Angels feel about this.
Tucker Davidson.
Yes, I think he'll be on the roster. He's had a really good spring, and he's got no options. And I mean, the thing about the Angels is they don't need to necessarily decide a sixth starter, and even Phil said this the other day. They're not going to decide a sixth starter until after the home series against the Nationals. I think like in the middle of April, because the off days are early on. So yeah, they'll have him on the team. I'm sure he'll probably come out of the bullpen to start the season, and they'll probably use him as a starter, assuming he's looked good and looked effective. Moving forward. I mean, the only complicating factor to that is Griffin Canning's also had a very good spring, and you probably would want to give him an opportunity if he feels like it's deserved. But I mean, just starting the year, it would be stupid for the Angels to just let Davidson walk after the spring he's had. Some team would take him, so it makes no sense.
Absolutely. And the last one, probably the biggest question, Ben Joyce.
Ben Joyce, man, it's going to be either Joyce or Wance, I think. I'm going to say no on Ben Joyce because I do think that Andrew Wance has had a good enough spring where they're just, he had a good year last year. It's really tough. I mean, you get in Wance. Wance is a middle innings, come in, bridge guy. Like, he's reliable. Like, I think you're comfortable putting him in a game that you're winning. Ben Joyce is like got that factor to him where he's like, okay, well, maybe you have like this shutdown dude that throws 104 and like instills fear in every person that comes up. And you don't want to lose that. And also, he probably only has so many bullets to throw this year. I mean, he's got like 50 innings ever. Like, this guy does not pitch much. So, I'll say no to start the year, but we're going to see Ben Joyce, I'm guessing, pretty early on. I think same thing with like Zach Weiss. He had a really good end of the year last year. He's not really been around in spring because he was playing for Team Israel, but I expect him to be up early on in the season too when there's an opportunity.
Yep. Absolutely. A lot of really interesting questions still be figured out here in the next 2 weeks or so. And I think the Jose Marte injury helps out Ben Joyce a little bit because you were kind of
looking. Absolutely. That was obviously outside of, obviously hope the best for Jose. My first thought was, that was, that would obviously open up a roster spot because they could just put him on the 60-day. I mean, it's a 4 week, they shut him down, but he's not, he's who need a ramp up of at least probably a month. So it's probably about at least 60 days. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So before we let you go here, Sam, let everybody know where they can find you, where on Twitter, where they can find your work on The Athletic.
Yeah, please go find me on Twitter at Sam Blum, the number 3. On theathletic.com, just go to the Angels tab. We'll be there all the time. There'll be lots of new stuff, and hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Absolutely. Go subscribe to The Athletic. It's a fantastic, fantastic way to get latest news on the Angels. So from Nate and myself, you can follow Nate Green on Twitter at NateGreen34, myself at Jared_Tims. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.